You're on, folks. See, I
Oops.
still quiet. Right. Someone talk, because I'm operating. I can't operate Zoom and talk to you all at the same time.
Hello, and welcome to the Full Stop Podcast, a childless community podcast with Michael Hughes, Berenice Smith, and me, Sarah Lawrence. If you're new to this podcast, we're here to delve beneath the surface of the childless identity, to cover what's going on in the wider community, and to look at the topics that really affect us. Our goal is to help and support those of you out in the community by sharing the stories and the voices that make up our narrative, so that you too can begin to find yours. We also aim to inform and educate those who aren't members of our community so that they can begin to understand and support those people in their lives who are facing a life without children. In this episode, we're lucky enough to be joined by Karin Enfield, founder of Pure Transformations. She's a grief counsellor, coach and consultant helping support childless people and organisations deal with grief and loss. Now, you might recognise Karin from episode 5 when she joined us as a World Childless Week ambassador. Karin is very active in our community, and it was great to have her back on, talking about something she's really truly passionate about and which we could all do more of, which is treating ourselves with self-compassion and looking to connect with others in our community. This is a really engaging and informative episode, not least because this was our first live audience while we were recording. This meant that not only did we have stage fright, but we also had live questions and live interactions with our audience. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode all about how we can have a little bit more compassion for ourselves. Well then, I suppose we should welcome Karin, really, as a start.
Probably a good idea.
So welcome, Karin. It's lovely to have you on.
Thank you, Sarah. And also, hi, Michael. Hi, Berenice. It is so nice to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. And as just like you just said yourself, let's take a deep breath and let's just jump right in.
So, Karin, who are you and what do you do?
I am Karin Enfield de Vries. I am a Dutchie living in Belgium, married to an Englishman, and that's what explains my names. And I am working as a grief and loss counsellor, a well-being coach, and a change management consultant, all rolled into one as part of my own business called Pure Transformations. And through that business, I support people going through transformations, going through any changes in life, dealing with loss and the grief that comes with it, with a particular strong focus on supporting women who are childless, not by choice.
That is fantastic. That must keep you very, very busy.
Yes, it keeps me a little bit too busy at times, but then there's kind of like lull moments throughout the year. So it's great fun, to be honest with you, and a great learning curve, I should add as well.
I was going to say, does it, I think better, sometimes some of the things that we do can actually aid our own well-being as well. Do you find that with the work you do?
Yes, definitely. Oh, absolutely. Through the work that I'm doing now, I get it's really strange, to be honest with you. I kind of get reminders of what I went through myself, but it's also kind of very comforting in a sense to kind of see, okay, hey, there is ways through this. I get triggers of, oh my gosh, I remember when I was at this certain moment in time in my own grief journey when I'm working with clients, and then helping them through that moment in time through my own lived experience is, of course, absolutely wonderful but that yet again, everybody grieves in their own unique way, and I think that's also very wonderful. But yeah, it's been really kind of, healing is the right word. It's very, very wholesome, very healing to do this work. I wouldn't want to do anything else anymore, to be completely honest with you. I just love it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. How have you found it then? Because obviously being reminded of your own grief, does it feel different for you? Because obviously you're working with that grief for somebody else, aren't you? But I guess it's pushing up against your stuff as well.
Yeah, well, I did. I finished a 3-year studies to become a grief and loss counselor, and of course, part of that is to go through your own grief journey. And part of my thesis was that I had to write a whole essay about going through my own grief journey from even, from even before you're born. You have to kind of start looking at losses in your family lines and stuff like that, because they all impact you as you grow up, and how you are taught to deal with loss and deal with grief. And I also learned to kind of protect myself when I am working with others who are grieving, and when I'm there in the capacity of a counselor or as a coach or as a consultant, to really be present with the other person, with their grief and what they are going through, and to kind of not kind of let that take over, or kind of jump over into my own grief or my own experience. And of course, I'm a human being, not a human doing. So there are times where someone shares something with me that really moves me or really touches me. And yeah, and I try to be as open as much as possible as I can be, whilst of course still remaining my professionalism, I should say, in that connection with the other person. But it's and I think it's also kind of beautiful, to be honest, to kind of share grief with people, especially when you're talking about a topic that is so close to my heart, as in this case, childlessness.
Ask a really an interesting question, or something that's brought up something for me, is this idea of protecting yourself from other people's grief. And I feel sometimes in our community, certainly myself, Sarah, you might have to chime in here as well, but that idea of how you protect yourself from other people's grief, what does that look like? So in terms of people maybe listening to this thinking, well, I'd like to be able to at least try that, because of course grief is infectious, all situations can be difficult. Boundaries, how does that work for you, and in a professional sense that might actually aid people listening to the podcast?
Thank you for that question. I think it's a combination of a few things. For me, I think the number one thing that has always helped me, even before I did my studies, is what I learned when I joined the childless community as well, is to be super self-compassionate, and to be really kind with yourself, and to kind of put your own needs and your own self-care above that of looking after other people. I used to have, well, I still do to a certain extent, have a tendency to look after others before I look after myself. And of course, like when you're on an airplane, when the oxygen mask drops out, God forbid we ever have to experience that ourselves. But that's what they always say, put your own oxygen mask on first before helping someone else. And I think for me, that's been instrumental in also kind of connecting with other people's grief in childless communities I've been part of, I'm still part of, I should say. So self-compassion, it's kind of allow yourself also to step away if you feel overwhelmed, and to not respond immediately from that emotional response that you might get when someone writes or shares or posts something of what they have experienced, and it really triggers you. Look after yourself first before you jump in and respond, because that might actually fuel your grief or fuel your triggers, rather than helping your nervous system to calm down first before you then respond. So that's been instrumental for me. So that's one of the things. And the other thing is that what also been really helpful for me is to, kind of sounds a bit contradicting, but to also then connect with my own safety network, kind of, so to speak, so that if I am triggered by something that I see in the childless community, I have connections in that community that are kind of like my go-to people. Like, oh gosh, I've just read this post, or I've just seen this video, or I've just heard this, I got triggered. Are you around? So that I can actually interact with a person that I trust, that I know, one-on-one. Again, it's part of self-care, I suppose, but it's also to kind of really just look for that connection in that moment in time, to kind of have a soundboard.
I think that's really sound advice, isn't it? I tend to find when I'm working with people, and I'm guilty of this myself, like, what the heck is self-compassion? You know what I mean? We use that terminology, and in the practical application, I think that's where sometimes we get a bit lost. It's like, well, what is self-compassion? And when you're in a bitch is just going absolutely crazy, or you've been triggered, or you're feeling really sad. I think it's how do we work with self-compassion? What tips would you have for that, Karen? How do you identify how to be self-compassionate, if you like, with yourself?
I love that question. What works for me, and of course this may look different for anybody's listening to this, and even for you guys here, but what really works for me is to kind of again, a couple of things, but the one that really jumps out for me is that how would I respond if this was a friend telling me their story, or telling me what their experience, or what they went through? How would I respond to them? And to kind of go from there, and then apply and think about those answers, and then apply some of those answers. Actually, well, you know what? If I would say that to a friend, or to even not a friend, just someone telling me a story, why don't I speak to myself that way? So I try to kind of practice with, hey, if I respond to another person in this way, well, what can I take from that, and share that with myself as well in that moment in time. I think that has really helped me to kind of, not shut up that inner bitch, because I've learned as well that inner bitches are there for a reason. It might be a bit too strong, but they are there to kind of like alarm. I'm visualizing this. I'm sorry. I realize we're on a podcast. Like an alarm bell going off, like an alarm light on your dashboard in your car. It's like, oh, hey, pay attention. Someone's trying to make you sit up and listen. And then of course it's really important to also learn to make the distinction between the inner critical voice being the voice of truth, or actually the inner critical voice just being a voice from the past, a critical voice from the past, or just trying to kind of talk you out of a situation rather than actually encourage you to move forward in that situation. So that's been really helpful for me. And there's lots of exercises you can do around that. But self-compassion is just kind of hold yourself with kindness, gentleness, and tons of love, to be honest with you.
Karin, I'm interested to understand how you built that security, well, for want of a better word, that security network around you. We know the childless community are very siloed. We protect ourselves very, very diligently. So how hard did you find it to make that? And what tips do you have for people who would really love that, but just are like, I don't know how to do it?
Oh gosh, Michael, I think that's so far the biggest question of the day. How do I do it? How do we do it? And we, I mean, you as a collective, us as a collective, we, courage, I suppose. It takes courage, and also, I think, a certain willingness, maybe even also to kind of, hey, I want to move forward through this. I want to heal. I want to find those connections, and then also be brutally honest with yourself. To be real frank here, is to say, hey, okay, what am I aiming to get out of this? What is it that I need? Do I just need a sounding board? Do I need a place to offload? Do I need a place to vent my anger? Do I need a place to vent or just to rant and rave about the unfairness of it all? Or am I actually looking for a deeper connection that can help me kind of work through the grief together and kind of move in towards a direction of healing as a collective? And how can you then pick the people around you or from that community? Because at the same time, it's a bit of I'm curious to hear how your experience. I'm going to ask a question to you guys in a minute, but I'm curious to hear about your experience around this. But for me, I've also found what you just said as well. There's such a protection within the childless community, and it's such a siloed community, and it's also a community. And I think I've said it before, I didn't really want to be a part of. If you catch my drift, I never expected to be in this community when I was,
Who did?
I think none of us were, being childless, not by choice or by circumstance. We didn't choose to be here. And so that in itself can be a huge process to kind of get to a place of acceptance around that. And not everybody that you meet in this community is your cup of tea. Not everybody, just because you went through the same thing doesn't automatically mean, oh, hey, we're best friends now. And I think I've had to learn that as well, that and also to kind of acknowledge that that's okay too. That I have had connections with people who've really helped me through a certain point in my childless grief, but who I'm now no longer in touch with, and that they were there for a specific period of time or for specific to help me fill a need that I had in my healing journey. And of course, I'm fortunate as well to have really made friends in these unexpected places, that people who I never would have met otherwise. So it's a kind of a bittersweet feeling there. And I'm just curious to hear, if that's all right. I know I'm a guest here, but I'm curious to hear what that's been like for you guys.
We knew this was coming. We knew you'd be thinking that way.
I'm going to open up the chat as well in a second to our audience here, so they can pop something in if they want to, because I think that's a really good question, and you may want to ask some questions yourself of us and of Karin. So I'm going to open that up now, and we'll, in the meantime, try and answer that question. That's a big question, isn't it? Michael, you started this.
Oh, okay. Well, my answer is actually really, really simple. That you just reach out. Just reach out to people. Now, I understand that I have the personality where I just do that. Berenice and I were talking the other day about ancestry DNA results as an example. And I probably didn't tell you this, Berenice, but I reached out to nearly every one of my DNA results and said, "Oh, we're related. Would you like to explore how we're related through DNA?"
That's like 5,000 emails. I mean,
well, okay, not 5,000, but at least a couple of hundred. The top 200. And of course, no, and like Karin said, there are some people that will just totally ignore you, and there are others that were like, "Oh yeah, look, I would love to." And the parallel there is that what I've discovered through this ancestry journey has been some rich and bloody amazing stories, and that's exactly what's happened. The same time I do that with the childless community, in that, I know so many people, some quite well, and some you would say as acquaintances, but some of the stories that have come out of it, and some of them are absolutely bloody heart-wrenching. But then others, like our podcast, we took a risk. We took a risk to start a podcast, and some of the stuff that's come our way, we knew this was going to happen. Excuse me. Some of the stuff that's come our way makes me do this. And so, I guess I just take the risk and think, fuck it, I'm going to do it and see where it goes. And really, that's as simple as it is for me. And I know that others, perhaps can't do that, but I hope that just from what I've said can give some people some inspiration about how it could be done. Not saying that my way's perfect, but yeah.
No, well, you and I were talking about this, weren't we, the other day, Michael? I'm a raging introvert. The thought of sending out loads of emails to random people that I am, relate to just chills me to the bone, really. I'm just like, shit, no. But I think, if we were to imagine a scale, I'd kind of be at the opposite end to you. But I found that actually connection was what I really needed. When I first was told that childlessness, I wouldn't have children, I was like, my automatic response is to withdraw. And then I was like, no, this is too big. I can't withdraw from this. So for me, looking at books, whatever was out there really. And there wasn't much when I came to this community. There's a whole wealth of stuff that you can connect to. The podcast, is, I would say, almost what I would be crying out for, so that I could hear voices with my story, but I wouldn't necessarily have to share my story. So for me, I'd say any sort of connection really, even if it's reading a book, listening to a podcast, whatever you need to hear something reflected back at you. As an introvert, that would give me the confidence to go, right, okay, then I know it's safe for me to reach out to that community in person, but it would take me a couple of steps to get there. I would not be sending emails out to people. Hi there, we're related. No, that's never going to happen. But I really admire that you do that. I think that's something that I would like to, be able to do and aspire to do. So that's something for me to work on, I think.
And thank you, Sarah, for that. And I'm just sorry, just as you're listening to you there, I'm just imagining us all sending emails to every childless person in the world. It's like, hey, we've got similar stories. Want to connect? Just how would that?
Have you seen my Facebook friendship list? You have a look at that. I've done it already.
Oh goodness! I just be like, no.
He's like, that's what you do. And Sarah and I are both, introvert. Yeah, I'm an introvert. I mean, exactly. Sarah and I are very probably why we're such good friends. We're like, no, that's just wrong. I think it's an interesting question, because I think when I first started doing the podcast, probably up until the moment that we pressed record, I think I was probably still at the angry stage, because I think I find it that the podcast really has been a huge form of work in progress therapy, actually, because I'm kind of the opposite, the same as you, Sarah, but also in the sense that I just didn't want to read anything more about it. I didn't want to associate with this word. It wasn't something that I dealt with. And even probably up to that point, I was still thinking that some kind of miracle might happen. So I think probably even the last four years of doing this, however long we've been doing the podcast, I suppose has been a point of kind of recovery. But I've found my biggest problem is being vulnerable. I don't do that easily. I'm very, very private, and also trusting people. I've gone from easily trusting people, probably when I was growing up, and having the privilege of a really fabulous family, to suddenly realize I have this difference that meant that I was different to the rest of my family. And then it became a difficult thing to trust them again, because they offered advice. And so for me, trusting people is hard. And I think also, that just absolutely, you are so right, Karin, and what you said about the childlessness. My take is it's never always enough glue. It's a big glue, it's a big thing in common, of course it is. But actually, what I found is, by having the privilege, actually, probably mostly actually through my design work, of being able to meet lots of people and help them with things and get them on their way to something in a practical sense, rather than perhaps a holistic sense, but actually it does do a thing, and it creates maybe an opening for somebody, and they go, oh, I can do this thing because you've given me the reason to do that. I now have a brand, I have a website, I have a thing, I do whatever it might be. Is great. But I think in doing so, it's that impactfulness of something. And I find it very hard sometimes to also, as Michael will say, is that I find it very hard to go, okay, the full stop has made this much difference for something that actually we just literally scribbled it out. But within all of that comes the risk that we might alienate other people who are our peers. And that's a risk. People might be jealous of what we've done. They might feel that, Michael's very popular. We've taken him away and stole him for ourselves. And Sarah is also very popular too, but we've created a thing that we felt, I think, isn't necessarily for us. It's for everybody else. And as you say, Sarah, it's about the voices. This is what I wanted. I think it was to hear someone talk, and to hear someone maybe swear a bit, get emotional, but talk something, again, within the last sort of time, this moment that we're online here together. Karin, I'm learning loads and going, oh yeah, did that? Oh, God, that's the thing too. Because actually we're always learning from each other, and isn't the most wonderful thing a conversation in real time that I'm hoping will benefit other people as they listen, and they can go, oh yeah, I found that with somebody as well. It's hard to realize the impact, and it's quite overwhelming, and in doing so it creates having to think about the boundaries, as you say, about your self-compassion for yourself, which I'm terrible at. Hands up, totally. There's lots of emotions around all of moving forward in some form.
And
quantify.
I love. Thank you for saying that you've already learned stuff as we're talking. That the same goes for me, and I think also what really jumps out right now, listening to all of you, and also kind of reflecting on my own answer there, is that I think I've needed to connect with people in this community as well to get to where I am today. I'm 11 years into my childless journey, and if it wasn't for everybody I've met in the community, whether they're still in my life or not, and whether they're still friends or not, or whether they ever became friends, I think everybody gave something to me that I was able to take that I was able to take something forward from, as I healed from the childless grief. And I think that's where probably the biggest power of our community lies as well, of this peer support, is that, because we all go through stages, right? When we're grieving, and we still do, even though, like I just said, I'm 11 years in, I still have moments that are very much griefy moments or triggering moments. So I'm still able then to connect to some of these peers in the community, but also I love that I was able to kind of, it sounds a bit stalkerish, but that's not how I mean it, but to kind of observe how other people dealt with, for example, being really angry about the fact that they were childless, or that they were kind of feeling completely lost or depressed, or even kind of in denial about it, or trying to kind of kind of talk themselves kind of, well, I probably deserve this, so that's what, blah blah blah. And so we've all been there, to kind of like this bargaining ourselves out of while we're actually in the community in the first place. And so I think that's for me, and then of course, also getting to the point to have role models, almost kind of say, okay, wow, look at these women, they've or men, look at these people having made a life for themselves, despite being childless, or maybe even because of that, because they are now childless, not by choice. I think it's safe to say, for all of us, we're living a different life than we may have thought we were going to live before we became to be childless.
Oh, completely. I think there's sometimes when I sat and had to pinch myself for the privilege of the stories that we've heard, the feedback from our listeners in the ways that they feed back, and the general just compassion that people have for each other. I had a comment once from a friend of mine who is a parent, and she said that she actually felt jealous of the compassion and the support that she could see that was around the different ventures that happen. She tuned in and picked up on World Childless Week and was just stunned that there were people willing to be ambassadors and to stand up and do that, and that people were able to sort of get involved in that in some form. And it's the same, with the full stop. She was amazed by that, and how actually the conversations that we have with our guests and how natural they are, and that for her that was a revelation, because she said, I didn't find that in any of her parenting groups. There's often the kind of a one-upmanship that's there, that exists, and that I think must be very hard to deal with. I think we do create perhaps a sense of I don't know, FOMO maybe. I mean, obviously we will all want the joy of missing out because it would be in a different life, but actually taking the stuff that we've all learned together and putting that into something that makes somebody else think, oh, got something, I think is a real accolade for the community at large, isn't it, really? The privilege of what we do, and I think of the stories we hear, and being part of that never ceases, I think, to amaze all three of us, actually. We've
I
got some
love that.
comments as well.
I love that.
Thank you. So the comments, we have a comment that says it's a case of no pain, no gain, which I would imagine, I'm guessing, relates to reaching out and creating those support networks. And another comment that says the childless not by choice journey has taken away many friendships and built some wonderful ones. This for me is a form of self-compassion. It is difficult for this journey not to create a paradigm shift in life. I found it easier to go with it. Yeah.
Gosh.
That's wow.
Yeah, that really resonates as well, because I think that's where, thank you for putting the comment in, dear listener. I think that this is almost like one of the biggest things that I've had to go through myself, but also what I see with people I work with and people in the community, is to get to that point where you find yourself in that moment, say, okay, all these paradigms are shifting. I just better kind of go with the flow of it rather than keep kind of battling against it, or kind of going up against it, or fighting it, whatever word you want to use to kind of that stops you from going with that flow. And I think that's been, for so many people in the childless community, or people dealing with adversity, people dealing with loss, dealing with unexpected loss, loss of dreams, loss of hope, especially. I think that is one of the biggest struggles that I also dealt with, is to actually get to that point where I was like, okay, I think, Michael, you already swore once, I'm gonna copy you there, but just to go, fuck it, let's just kind of submerge myself in it and see, just kind of go with the current instead of trying to go upstream all the time, because it was just simply exhausting. It was so tiring. It felt so lonely. It felt so isolating. It felt so, gosh. And I think that even I think the word they use is like uphill struggle. Well, that's what it really felt like. And especially then when you're carrying this massive big rucksack full of grief as well. My gosh, it's a surprise that some of us were still standing at that time when we did find the courage to reach out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm really struck by that, actually. You've set my mind off on a tangent, but it's kind of, I think that for me, sitting with our community and people in it, I think that's the difference, isn't it, Berenice? The fact that we're not competing. In fact, I often have people say to me, oh, well, my story is not as bad as yours or Berenice's or Michael's or whatever. And you're just like, it never occurred to me that this would be a game of top trumps. You're in this community that none of us envisaged we would be in. And I think part of the, if you like, going through that grief cycle and legitimising that is the grief. Somebody's put a lovely comment in there. I could recognise the legitimacy of my grief, and getting to that, almost like that holy grail of acceptance. We're all sort of like, when at the very beginning we're just like, right, I just want to shoot through all this crap, this shit, and just get to acceptance. But I think a big part of my journey actually was that self-compassion and being able to accept I am part of this community, how I turn up, who I am, the fact that I'm an introvert. Doing a podcast just blows my mind, if I'm honest with you. But it's kind of, there is a big part of getting to that acceptance is acceptance of self, isn't it? And of the position you're in and who you are and how you turn up in the world. How have you found that? Do you feel, as somebody mentioned, a paradigm shift? How have you experienced that, Karin, as you kind of reflect back and you work with new people? How do you find that? How do you sit with it?
It's a bit up and down, to be completely honest. On good days, I'm completely there, I'm completely with it, and I'm completely on the ball with it, where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, completely, fully self-accepting and completely compassionate and full of love and full of, determination to kind of get through this. And then there are moments where I'm just like, no, not today. We're not doing this today. I'm not there. Today I just need, I just want to, slam doors, fall off ladders, just kind of, break something, just kind of like have that, the kind of like, where I think we all have those days. Please tell me that you do, because otherwise I might just feel like the crazy one here. But, we all have those days where we just want to break something. We just want to go and grab a bat and just smash something. And of course, not hurting others. Disclaimer here. Always, wear safety goggles and mind how you go. I suppose there is a bit of self-care and self-compassion in there somewhere. But, so it's, and I think that's also okay to kind of accept. I think that's the duality of grief. And there's even, it's called a dual process model of grief. It's where you kind of oscillate between the grief orientation side and then the restoration side of grief is where then the grief oriented side is to really kind of submerge yourself into the grief and like, gosh, this really hurts. And why? And, all the anger and all the rage and everything that comes with that part of grief. And then you kind of swing back into like, okay, got that out of my system. Now there's room for, hey, how can I restore from this? And how can I move a little bit further, perhaps on the scale of grief than where I was before I let go of the anger and stuff. And I think that's also how I work with my clients, is to kind of see, hey, where are they at? And especially I think also what's important to remember, if you meet someone or talk to someone, even in the community, always try and see where they're at, even though you might be somewhere different in your journey, because someone's response or someone's post or someone's whatever it is that they share might come from a place of where they are having, that kind of one of their darker griefy days, whilst you might be going like, hey, life is pretty good, even though I'm carrying this grief with me, but today is a good day and I'm kind of content. So also there, I think I said it at the beginning as well, be aware of where you are at that moment in time and just kind of see, hey, how can I respond to this person that is helpful, that is useful, but also to still be mindful of where I'm at, rather than jumping back into into where they are. It's also okay to stay where you are and just kind of say, hey, you know what? It's okay. Those days are part of it. I think that for me has been really crucial almost. God, it actually touches me a little bit at this moment. Michael did warn me that this would happen when I was talking to you guys, and yeah, here it is. Yeah, kind of accepting the dark with the light, and to kind of be okay with both, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that darkness can come in so many different ways. The conversation has sparked a memory for me, and I think it's a really good example of self-compassion, but at the same time, it's about sitting with a bit of darkness. Some time ago, Vicky and I were out to dinner with a group of friends who we've known for a long time, been around, we've been together for ages, and they are very aware of our situation. And there we were sitting at dinner, and then this might be a bit too much information, but the conversation then went to, because all the rest of them are parents, went to when they had their children who had the most stitches, and it started to get quite graphic. And I looked over to Vicky and I could just see that it was affecting her. So I said, at quite a reasonable volume, are you okay? And everyone would have heard that, and it mattered nothing. Nothing at all. The conversation just kept going, and so that sent us both into a bit of a spiral, because I was pissed off that they could think that way. Vicky was deeply hurt that these friends that she thought were, were compassionate, now appeared they weren't. And so between the two of us, we just made the decision, right, you're gone. That's it, out. For our own self-compassion, for our own mental health, that we haven't seen them since. That paradigm shift is that one of the things that we've had to become comfortable with is that not only letting go of our grief, but letting go of people. And, it's not a nice thing, but at the end of the day, we're being compassionate to ourselves. Karin, have you ever had an experience like that? Do you have any, words of advice around that sort of thing?
What, dinner parties with awkward conversations?
Well, just more about letting that whole thing about you're going to have to. In my logical mind, it's more about, well, look, shit happens. You got to let that go. But I know sometimes it's not as easier said than done.
Yeah, and what really bugs me about having to do that is that it feels like it's always us that have to do that.
Yeah.
Why? And this is something that I've really, and it might also be my own perception, because I am where I am, and I am in a situation that I'm in this case, being childless and being surrounded by people who are parents. And again, also there I have moments where I'm completely at ease, I'm completely comfortable with being in that situation. And then there are moments where I'm just like, what you've just described as well, like, no, out, nope. No more, that door is closing, and it will not be opened again. It is bolted shut, and there's no way through that anymore. And I think that was one of the hardest things to realize, is that it's always us. And with us, I mean us being the childless person at the table, or in a social environment, even at work, whenever we find ourselves interacting with others who might be parents or non-parents, or whatever their parental status is. But when we get uncomfortable, I find that too often we're the ones that kind of like, oh, do you know what? I'll just suck it up. I'll just deal with this. I'll just make my way through this, rather than actually go, you know what? I'm not going to sit here or stand here and be subjected to this, because it really is too painful for me. And I know that if I stay in this situation, I'll probably need 5 days to recover from this emotionally. And why would I do that to myself? So I think that's also one of the things that I've learned the hard way, is that I've had too many recovery days, so to speak, after social events, where I just went, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't keep doing this to myself. And then, of course, with that, being self-compassionate and really looking after myself, came the loss of that connection, of that friendship, or of that relationship, regardless of the level of the level of that relationship, what the level of that relationship was. And that came with a sense of loss. And then again, I had to like, oh gosh, going through another grief cycle. I'm going through another cycle of dealing with loss, another cycle of transformation, where I had to observe what was happening. I had to check in with my own feelings around that. I had to reflect on, hey, but where is it coming from? Is it me or is it the other person? And I had to act on that. Okay, what do I do and what do I need in this situation? And then kind of grow around that. And I've just sneakily threw in my circle of transformation that I work with as well, where you kind of find yourself in a situation, observe what's happening, feel what that does for you, reflect on it, look at and act on the needs that you have in that moment in time, and then you can grow from there. And that that also asks of us that we kind of are open, but that we open ourselves up to the pain and the sense of loss that comes with the loss of that particular relationship, or that friendship, or that that colleague that we used to have a lot of fun with, but they're like, you know what, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So it's a tough one, and it really is. Like I said, almost infuriating at times that it always has to be us, to be kind of like the understanding, between brackets, the understanding one. And I know I'm charging a little bit here, because I do have friends and people in my social circle who do get it, who do understand, who are very understanding. And that when I do speak up, or when my husband checks in with me at an event, like, hey, are you okay? And someone clocks that say, hey, sorry, I just realized we were talking too much about a specific topic. You're right. Let's talk about something else. How can we bring you back into the conversation? So I'm very grateful to have also people in my life, and I think that's also because I'm such an extrovert, and I never stop talking, and I share my story wherever, to whomever wants to hear it. And I think, but that has really helped as well, to kind of learn how to open up and not be silenced, not be shut down, and not be kind of shying myself away in a corner just because I'm the childless one at an event, or in a social circle.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because what I found with the journey, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we call it a journey, right? But it's what I found was that being open, I felt incredibly vulnerable at the beginning, whereas now, not so much. It just, it just is. I've got blonde hair and I'm childless. I don't know, maybe it takes on less significance the more compassionate you are. So, I'm not going to go to that bar mitzvah, that naming ceremony. I'm actually going to perhaps send a gift, and that's all I have the capacity for right now. Whereas before it'd be like, I should go and have fun. I should be able to go and sit with the conversations and the pain. I wonder if that circle of transformation is part of that process in accepting that there are limitations into what you can do and working within it.
Definitely. Because I think if you allow yourself to take that time to make the observation, to kind of check in with those feelings, and then to kind of, act upon them in a way that serves you, while still being also true to yourself. If you are a person that does enjoy going to events, or that wants to be part of your cousin's life, or whomever's birthday party it is, or whomever's wedding, or whatever the occasion, whoever the person is, if you find it important to invest in that relationship, try and find a way to do so that it works for you, but also that you still invest in that relationship. And that's also what it asks of you in that moment in time, because it's also sometimes it can be too easy is not the word, but it can be tempting to just kind of draw in the bridge, close down the shutters, and just kind of close yourself off from the world completely. And I think, although that's a part of grief that we've all kind of been, I've been there, where I just, I didn't want to interact with anybody. But I've also had to learn that for some relationships to survive my childlessness, and the relationship to stay strong, is that I've also had to reach out to the other person to explain myself, but also to find ways to stay connected. That might not mean showing up in person, but indeed send a card or get a thoughtful gift and have that sent over, or
Storyhouse Childless takes place on Saturday the 23rd and Sunday the 24th of September at the Garrett Theatre in Chester in the UK. It's 2 days of events to explore living without children, to build community, to meet new friends, and to hear people's personal stories. We're delighted to be there over the weekend, and we'll be recording the Full Stop podcast live on the 24th of September. The team at Storyhouse have given us 2 weekend passes to give away. All you need to do is head to their website, www.storyhouse.com/childless, and find out who the keynote speaker is for 2023. Then enter the competition at our website, www.thefullstoppod.com/Storyhouse2023, where you can also find the full terms and conditions. The closing date is midnight on the 18th of July 2023, after which we'll randomly select the winner, and we'll announce the winner on our August 2023 podcast. Good luck.
Long live Zoom, long live video chats these days. I just maybe sometimes record a little video message. It's like, hey, thinking of you today. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'm with you there in spirit, and just kind of leave it at that as well, rather than going into explaining, why I'm not there, because that's what I used to do. I went into this whole kind of almost like paragraphs or chapters of, I'm really sorry, but it's too much, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore either. I've stopped excusing myself for not being there, and just say, hey, you know what? I choose me. I choose to show up in a way that works for me, but still also makes you feel that you're part of it and that you're included.
I love that, Karin.
Love it.
I absolutely. I think that's something. Yeah, definitely. I would certainly take away from that, because I'd certainly find that very hard. Personally, from way back in no before we even knew that the word COVID existed. Then I was deeply hurt at a family gathering where we'd done the whole check-in, and we were being supportive of each other, and what we found was that actually someone pitied me for the fact that I wasn't having a drink, that I was looking after myself. And that was really hard. And I have to say that one comment set me back months, because I thought, I'm not an object of pity. Really not. I mean, we'd started the podcast by then, actually. We were about 6 months into the podcast, so we were kind of already finding our feet, and we'd broken that kind of 8 episodes thing where people say, oh, that's 8 episodes. But in order to explain oneself, you have to give away, I had to give away pieces of myself. And at that point I thought, nah, I am done. I wasn't going to be swearing on this podcast, but I'm done with that fucking shit. I am not telling you, particularly relation in this case, how I'm feeling in order to make you feel that you can justify saying you pity me, when actually I've just watched your family all go absolutely legless on the dance floor. And there was a thing going on behind the scenes with the particular family that I knew was going to happen and boom at some point, and it did over the Christmas period. And I was like, oh, well, there we go. You know, it's one of several things that makes up who I think we are. But sometimes explaining it's giving away pieces of ourselves. And that if it was something else, and that was the interesting thing about COVID, is that universally everyone was dreading this thing. So we were united in a thing. But actually, when you've gone through quite a lot of trauma with coming to terms with childlessness, I was one of the people that sat there going, okay, but this is peanuts compared to actually what I've been through. When none of you reached out and said, are you okay? I don't really want to talk about how I'm doing with COVID. I'm probably doing the same as you are, but actually ask me something else about myself. And I think it's an interesting few years in that. I'm rambling now with no particular point, but I'm just sort of actually there is this huge kind of like compassion that I think that exists within us. And the one thing that when we talk about how the glue of childlessness maybe isn't everything, but I think we've all universally at some point within our community been through a thing where we've sat there like Michael, like Vicky, and gone, what the hell am I doing here? Why? But letting those relationships go, my goodness, that hurts. And you're right, Karin, it is a form of grief. It's really upsetting. And it comes up time and time again, doesn't it? In the things that the conversations I think we have, and in support groups, doubtless it will come up in our full stop community too. How do you deal with that grief of letting a dear friend go? And if you don't, how do you stay in touch with them on your own terms? And that's a really, really tricky thing. It's very tricky.
Yeah, it is really tricky. And I would recommend anybody who's listening, who is struggling with that, is to kind of, open up about that also in whatever community you are part of, or whomever you are connected with in the childless community, or perhaps, even with a childless informed therapist, counselor. There's a few of us around. Because there are ways that you can practice with that, but also just kind of, and it looks different for everybody, right? We've already here between the 4 of us, there's 4 different characters here, and so each of us deals with that in our own way. We all show up as friends in our own unique way, and I think that's the beauty about that as well. I always say to people, please be your most youest version of you. Not the truest, but the youest version of you, because that's the only way you can be your complete authentic self. And I think also what you just said, Berenice, is that pity, that openly being pitied. Oh, it's one of my real big kind of red flags, whatever it's called, but it's just like it enrages me so. And if people catch me on a bad day, oh my God, do they never pity anybody else ever again? Because I just go like, like that. But and other moments, other moments when when I'm a bit more connected to my healthy brain, where I'm a bit more emotionally stable. I have also come to a place where I sometimes just kind of laugh at them.
I think that's where I got to. I had the 1 a.m. in the morning, because it was way after the event happened. So it wasn't something at the time. And then this happened, and I was like, oh, at the time I was like, my God, I'm so angry. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm having a rant. And then about weeks later, I'm like, oh God, really? And then finally I got to the point where I thought, oh, you absolute twonk. Really? If that's what you think of me, then really you're missing out. But it took a long time to get that, and probably a bit of ranting. I probably think with Sarah and Michael about it too, because again, we are our own little network. So and it was again just having someone to talk to and go, am I wrong for thinking this? Just to sense check myself that is it just me, or would you do? And invariably, of course, the answer is I'm angry for you too, and that is like, oh, thank goodness someone else can actually take that anger from me and say, okay, look, give me this for a minute. It's a bit like bag of grief. And I always think that the grief we carry is a bag, and some days it's heavy and we need help with it. And other days we carry it and we know it's there, but we can manage the load. And in a way, I think all emotions can be a bit like that. Anger is one of them. Actually, look, can someone just take my anger away just for a few minutes or a couple of days? And then just, I'll have it back, but I just need you to just deal with that for me, because I can't do that. And that doesn't have to mean, I think for listeners who are thinking, well, okay, you've got a partner. I think friends can do that too. We do that. We're here for our listeners, whoever and however you are, and wherever and how you live, we'll do that for you, because I think you just need someone around to do that with you. It's critical to recovery to have that support network. Someone to trust. Yeah.
Definitely. And I also love how you touched upon anger just once again, because I think I do believe there are healthy forms of anger also when you're grieving. It's a healthy emotion to have. I think what you need to be careful of when your anger goes underground, when it turns into rage, and when you actually start not just breaking objects in the safety of with your safety goggles, and just kind of, but when you kind of start really kind of hurting yourself or others around you with your angry behavior. I think that's also a time to kind of, think, okay, hey, maybe I just need to reach out to someone and kind of say, hey, where can I place this? Where can I go with this? And I think it's good to be aware of that. And I think that goes for any emotion that you feel, not just anger, but also, envy or, sadness or anything, any of the emotions on the scale. I think be aware of, hey, how much is still healthy emotion and how much is kind of like, okay, I might need some support with this.
I think that's really good, because it's something I struggled with way back, and recognizing and coming to terms with the fact that I was actually hurting myself was actually quite a big revelation. And you don't actually realize the kind of tiny ways that one does that and have up. So wise words, Karin. Absolutely agree.
Thank you.
We have a question for you, Karin.
Oh, exciting. Come on, bring it on.
So from the audience, how do you know if counselling or coaching would be the better option for someone, or have they decided that before they come to see you?
Oh, what a brilliant question. And I would like to extend it also to Sarah, if that's all right. I don't want to put you on the spot there, but I think it would be good to get a perspective from someone who's extroverted like me and a counsellor, and then maybe from a more introverted perspective, but also a counsellor. And I think it's good to get those two perspectives. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So for me, thank you, listener, for that question. I really love that you are asking that. Again, I think it's really personal. Because I think that sometimes it's hard to recognize when you get to the point of acknowledging to yourself, I might need some help. I could do with some counseling. I could do with some coaching. But sometimes it's also people in your environment, whether it's a partner or a good friend or perhaps a work colleague that you kind of have a good working relationship with, or it could be just a random conversation with a stranger on a bus. That also happens, where people might go, hey, that sounds really tough and it sounds like you're struggling. Have you ever thought of getting some help? And then for some people, that really is a light bulb moment where they go, help? There's no help for me around this topic. Oh, there actually is. And so I think it really is personal. In my experience within my practice, I see that most of my clients, the majority, come to me with the question that, hey, I'm ready to get some help by the time they've reached me. And I think that's also a very healthy approach to getting some help, because of course you have to want it yourself. Even if someone says to you, I think you should get help, and you're like, well, actually I'm not there yet, or I'm not ready, or I don't think I need help, then it becomes forced, and I really doubt how successful you then could be in your healing journey with help, because you really have to be willing to get the support, and also be willing, even more importantly, be willing to do the work. And I think you'll know within yourself when you're ready for that. Because I remember, just before I go to Sarah, I remember when I was at the beginning of my grief journey, if someone had told me then, oh, hey, I think you need to go and talk to someone, I would have just probably smacked him in the face, because I was A, very angry, B, little Miss Independent over here. Hi, I don't need help. I can do all this by myself. I build bamboo fences by myself, those kind of things. And so you're not going to tell me that I need to get support. And then it was I think it was a good 18 months later when I realized, this path of self-destruction and this path of being too bloody independent and just kind of like trying to fix everything myself. I think I talked about it earlier on the podcast already. That uphill struggle just became too much, and I kept falling over. And at one point I was just too exhausted to dust myself off again. And like, okay, I need help. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's how I got to, or that's what I would say to that question. Sarah, what's your perspective on that?
I do work with grief, but I mostly work with trauma. So my counselling is slightly different.
Yeah.
What I would say is most people, by the time they've reached out to me, they're in a pretty desperate situation. They don't know who to talk to. They talk to friends, and they're just not getting what they need back from just that conversation over a coffee or whatever. So I was in a fairly similar situation. I went through the angry bit, but I realised fairly quickly that I was really, really in a very dark place. And for me, coaching wouldn't be enough. So for me, coaching is really, really good to take you from where you are, springboard you into a future. What does my future look like? How can I change some of my behaviour patterns to stop the self-sabotage and take me forward? Whereas I would say counselling, and this was my experience, was what's happened in the past that is now influencing my present and potentially going to influence my future if I don't stop the pattern. And for me, I was very self-destructive, very angry, had a lot of stuff had happened before the childlessness, and that had influenced the way that I reacted to my childlessness. So as you can imagine, it's no coincidence that I'm a trauma therapist, because that was where I went with mine. So I would say, if you are in a very dark place, or just a space where you need somebody to listen without a judgment, a helpful suggestion, or has that sense of knowing, Karin and I have lived experience, and that's why we've come into this space, because I don't know about you, Karin, but I couldn't find a therapist that could sit with my childlessness without, have you thought about, have you considered trying to fix it? And I was like, no, I need a therapist that goes, do you know what? I know where you are. I've been there. And actually I've worked through it, and I can role model that in some way, and provide that safe space. The triggers that you sometimes have to walk past without them having that awareness, and that's no fault of their own. But play sets or family photographs, whatever, and before you know it, you're in the room, and it's like you're triggered, and you're just like, I'm shut down now as well. So I think if you are in that dark space, maybe it's about counselling rather than coaching, but it's whatever you feel comfortable with. And it's about having a conversation with that therapist, counsellor, to see if they're the right fit for you. Yeah. So, you may you may want to work with somebody like me who's quite introverted, specialises in trauma, takes it in a different direction. Whereas Karin, you may need whatever Karin offers, which is extroversion, a lighter side of it, the grief focus. You have to go looking for the right therapist. It simply won't work if you don't feel safe in that relationship. That's my take on it. So yeah, it's about when you feel in that place, going to find the right person for you.
Thank you both, because I think that's really informative for our audience, and it's a fantastic question as well. Thank you, listener, for that. I found that, really, really useful, because it can be really difficult to find the right person for you. Certainly my experiences are that it took quite a number of goes to find that right person to help me get through things. And what I think is fantastic is, I know, Sarah, you're working on your childless mental health hub that will allow people to find people who have got childless experience and the right counsellors, and that's going to be really useful as that grows for our community. I'm absolutely sure of it. I know I would have welcomed that when I first came to this space. Would have welcomed both of you as advice. Yeah, goodness, how lucky I am to know you. How lucky we all are to know both of you. And Michael too, of course. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Have we got any more questions as we start to bring the podcast to a close today? Anything else that we would like to ask in our audience? Please feel free just to use the chat and let us know. And
it doesn't always have to be about what we've been talking about today. You might just be curious, because I'd be that person. I would ask something totally off topic because I'm a curious person.
Are we related? Actually, the great news is, folks, is that I've got my DNA done. Okay, so this is the conversation, just to throw slightly off track, is that I did my ancestry DNA because Michael mentioned he'd had his done. And so yesterday morning we were talking about bits and pieces we had to do around, bits to do with our online community admin stuff and things that were driving us slightly mad. And of course we did a bit. But mostly we talked about ancestry and family trees. And the great news is that Michael and I are not related. We thought that there might be my family come from Essex. And of course, those of you who know, is that Michael also comes from Essex. We are not kind of like eighth cousins or any kind of, well, not yet. I mean, I don't know. I haven't quite got that far into it myself. It's only been a couple of days, but it was interesting. I recommend doing it because actually it was really cool, because I thought, it's going to be so dull, and actually it was really more interesting, my ancestry, than I actually thought it was. So there you go. But yeah, we both have Essex roots, but we've never encountered, our relatives have not so far that we know of encountered each other, which is good. So yeah. Digression. Oh, thank God, we're saved by the chat.
Oh, it's so funny. I'm just dreading Michael's nosy questions now.
Oh, I know. Do always stand guard.
I love a nosy question.
All right, how was your holiday, Karin?
Oh, the holiday was amazing. For those of you who are listening, what Michael is referring to, I just spent 12 days in Greece on a small Greek island after 6 years of not being on a beach holiday, kind of relaxing holiday. I've done city trips for the last few years, but I haven't been on a proper relaxing holiday, and I can highly recommend it. We had a little villa overlooking a cliff with our own private pool, and it was just pure, absolute bliss. And I am still kind of 2 weeks I've been home for 2 weeks, and I'm still kind of like, nah, I don't think I want to be home too much. I'm just already looking at kind of going away next. How can I make that happen time wise, financially wise, and just kind of like to fit it all in. No, but it was wonderful, absolutely brilliant. I can highly recommend it. If anybody wants to know where I went, please contact me. I'll be happy to share the details. It was brilliant.
It looked amazing.
So what's next for you, Karin?
Oh, great question, Michael. What's next for me? What's next for me in relationship to Pure Transformations it's quite an exciting time, actually. I am besides being a guest on your podcast, I've been also a guest on another podcast, Happy and Childless, with Helen Gallagher, and we've decided to kind of come up with a mini series. So that's kind of really exciting about that. There's some great stuff in the making that I can't tell you too much about, but I think we can do a little spoiler alert here, Sarah. I'm just going to tease people a little bit here. Can't give away too much details just yet, but I'm really pleased to let you guys know that Sarah and I, together with the wonderful Yvonne John, are working to kind of look into potentially setting up a retreat for childless women, which is like a multiple day retreat where we do kind of some cognitive work, but also some breath work, some body work. There's going to be walking, chanting, lots of stuff, and it's just we're just throwing ideas back and forth, and it's gone from just a little idea to something that could be potentially quite big. And but so very excited to be working on that. My practice is still growing, so that's really exciting as well. And so I'm just kind of finding my feet in this whole new, well, I say new space, but it's kind of like I realized this morning when I woke up that it's almost been a year since I kind of ventured out after a massive change in my work in the childless community. That it's been a year, and things are kind of coming full circle also. So talk about that wheel of transformation that I mentioned earlier. I think it's pretty timely, and how wonderful to be spending this moment with you as well today, kind of coinciding with that year kind of coming to a full close. So I'm excited. I'm finding my own feet. I've got tons of ideas. I just need to find a little bit of time how to manage it all. But also that is on the cards. And so thank you for that question, Michael. Future is looking exciting and bright. And I'm happy.
I'm so pleased. We know a little bit about the spoiler, obviously Sarah being part of here, and Michael and I thrilled to bits, absolutely thrilled to bits. We can't wait to see what happens. And fantastic work with Helen Gallagher, of course, Happy and Childless. Well done, you and Helen. It's always good to have another podcast around as well. Absolutely believe in collaboration, not competition. So we're really looking forward to listening to that too. So yeah, it's all wonderful. I'm so thrilled for you, Karin. It's been a year, and it's been lovely to watch developments and to hear what's coming up too. How brilliant is that? Well done.
Oh, thank you, guys. And if I may use just this opportunity to kind of express my incredible gratitude to the three of you as well. You have been so supportive in this last year, and I think it's just really good to know that I have true friends also in the community, and you certainly are very part of that inner circle, and I really, really appreciate that. So thank you, guys. It's I really, really appreciate it. There's lots of love from me to all of you guys, and I love what you guys are doing. I wish you all the best with Circle as well. I'm happy to be a part of that, and just kind of curious to see how that evolves. What a fantastic thing to do, and who knew that when you started this podcast that this is where it would lead. So I wish you nothing but the best with that, and it's so needed in the community, and I am just so chuffed to bits that you've taken the plunge, and may that circle grow and cause ripples across the globe, and reach everybody in our community who needs it, because we wouldn't be where we are today without the connections in those communities, and I'm really just so chuffed to see you guys pay it forward. Very proud of you. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Oh goodness me. Okay, right now. I'm going. You don't. Three of us.
Yeah, I just had to put myself on mute there for a little bit.
No.
It's lovely, isn't it? It goes back to that whole thing, isn't it? Of like I think sometimes we do create this amazing thing where it is the fear of missing out. And I think that's a wonderful thing to create in this community. I don't think ever, as you say, Karin, I think when we had this idea on the literally scrap of a post-it note, which I wish I kept. It was literally this neon pink post-it note, and I wish I kept it. Where I kind of had this scribble, and I thought, had a chat with Michael, and I thought, Sarah would be good for this. and realize that we all like podcasts, and we thought, oh, there it is. And actually, yeah, to go from that, and the privilege of meeting all these wonderful people that we've met along the way, and everyone that listens to us too. Wow, it's a leap of faith, but sometimes we have to do those leaps of faith, because sometimes we just need to, we get itchy feet too, and we need to go and push our boundaries and go out there and explore the world. And I think that's one of the great things about meeting our guests, is you've all encouraged us to do a bit more.
Thanks for listening. We hope you found our conversation with Karin as engaging and as informative as we did. We'd love to hear from you if you found the topic interesting or have been able to see more self-compassion in your own life. If you'd like to find out more about our podcast, or you have a great idea for a topic we've not covered, or you just want to know a bit more about something we've already discussed, just let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We want this podcast to have as many voices from across our community as possible, so if something's missing or you just want a deeper dive on it, let us know. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn. You can also become a member of our brand new online community. It's a safe and inclusive space for anybody that's a member of the childless community. You can find more details on our website at www.thefullstoppod.com. You can also sign up to our listeners list at the website, which keeps you up to date on what we're up to, and if you'd like to, you can also donate to our work too. As always, it's important for us to remind you, you're not alone.
I just wish our audience would have seen you, Karin, about 6 or 7 months ago, and then seen you now. I'll just try and explain to them that, there is a vast difference to the way that Karin is smiling right now. So, you're beaming, girl. You're beaming.
Yeah, well, I'm amongst one of my favorite one of my favorite peoples in the community. So you are all kind of causing me to beam this way. But thank you, Michael, for I am in a different place, and it's a good place to be. So thank you for that.